Welcome in, WinDailySports.com. My name is Jon Jansen. Follow me at JJansen34. And joined today by my guy Joel at Draftmaster Flex. Joel, this is your first time on a nice Tuesday edition of Targets and Touches, which you do right here at WinDailySports.com. All sponsored by the Sharp app. Go to sharp.link, and you can check out all of the ways that you can download the Sharp app, which is a great app, especially for all of your betting needs. So go check that out there at sharp.link. And we have a promo going, Double Up. And if you use that promo code Double Up, you can get a buy one, get one over at WinDailySports.com for a gold membership. All right, Joel, targets and touches. It's something that, how much do you take a look at? And just because this is the first time you're on the show here for this one, how much do you look at kind of week to week with the target share? I know we like to look at it in total, but just a week to week thing. How much do you take into account if a guy maybe went up a bunch in his target share or went down? How do you kind of look at that week to week?
It's critical, and especially for DFS. I mean, those are the guys. That's how you find value, right? The guy who's getting 6 or 7 targets a week that has a low price tag, but maybe hasn't produced yet. Like, his day is coming because they're going to him, right? It's the guy you like his name, but is getting thrown to once or twice a game is not coming because he doesn't get the ball enough. So that's where we want to be here. And it might not pop. Like, the biggest thing that's important with this show is being consistent viewer week to week, because we might look at this and know that somebody's getting 6 or 7 targets. That doesn't mean they're going to pop this week, but it knows that it's coming because the target share keeps going up. So consistency is key.
Yeah, consistency, very much so, is key. And that's what we're going to try and continue to look for here. And one guy that, despite whatever the offense may look like, despite especially Ben Roethlisberger's issues now, we think he's done. But Jon Jansen, if that's one guy, just basically don't worry about him. The target share is going to be there every single week, no matter what the offense looks like.
Yeah, I agree. And that was last year too. That again, that goes back to consistency. This isn't new. He is the number one receiver there. The only issue with Pittsburgh is that there's so many mouths to feed. It's confusing because there's so many guys they can go to, but he's the guy. He's the one they've been going to consistently. Playing any of Ben Roethlisberger's receivers right now is going to make me squirmish. But
it's crazy. 3 straight games of at least 10 targets. That is huge and absolutely notable, because look, even if he catches 60% of those targets, what are we still looking at? A 6 reception 60-70 yard game and a possible touchdown each time. It's just so much of a target share. Again, are we worried about Pittsburgh's offense? Absolutely. And I think you should be worried about Najee Harris a little bit, but Jon Jansen is one that I guess we look at matchup a little bit and that'll determine some things, but there just seems like there's always that safe floor with him all the time.
Well, I think part of it also has been they've been so bad that they're being put in these negative game scripts where they kind of have to
get out of nowhere. Yeah.
So, I mean, that does kind of suit it up well for them, because if they do get to a point where they improve and the running game starts working, it's going to hurt them because the game script just means they have to just keep dumping the ball downfield to him. So we'll see how they do. I mean, I hope they get better. It's kind of sad to see this kind of falling apart old man out there playing quarterback.
It really is. I know, a Super Bowl winning quarterback, like a Hall of Fame quarterback, and we're watching him trip over his own feet. And it's just, it's brutal to see. But Jon Jansen is one. But another one, and we'll get some of the guys that are surprising you with sort of their target share, but Cooper Kupp's another one. At this point, and I know coming into the season, we were kind of weary about if he's going to fit into a Matthew Stafford kind of version of this offense, but he's just every single week. I mean, this guy is so good.
Listen, Cooper Kupp's a stud. There's no doubt about it. I will say this, though. I think people are getting over – listen, they had a couple great games. They went to him a lot. I think like we saw this week, teams are starting to maybe cover him a little differently as the number one receiver, and I don't think it's going to be as easy. I think we're due to see Robert Woods start getting a little bit more targets, the attention going to Kupp. So I think he's going to regress a little bit. I do think he's still going to be a stud. He's going to finish a wide receiver 1 by the end of the year, but I don't think he's going to finish as the wide receiver 1. So we got to temper the expectations just a little.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Robert Woods, I mean, he's the one that, he's doing fine, but it's just obviously Cooper Kupp is demanding more attention. Do we think that's going to shift at all at some point? Look, is this turning into maybe a DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett type thing?
Yeah.
Or Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, same thing.
Yeah, I think so. I think more so Kupp's the number 1 and Woods is the 2 for sure. But I do think it's going to start getting closer than we've seen, just because I think teams early in the year played them evenly, and I think now it's going to be Kupp's the number one, and they're going to start playing them that way. And I think, the way that offense is, take what's given to you, and that's what they're going to start doing. So I do think there'll be a bit of a regression to the even or norm or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, Kupp has still been great, and he still will be the number one receiver. But I think what's turning me off a little bit is like DraftKings making him the highest price guy and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think so too. So one guy who's getting the targets, and we usually we're doing this for a reason, targets and touches, because we like to highlight the targets, and that's the players you want to go after. But one guy that kind of is weird to me is Jacoby Myers, just because I also think we have to put in there big playability. What do they do with that production? Like Jacoby Myers, if you're in a PPR league, sure, pretty safe floor in terms of targets, but the explosiveness is not there. Just not with him. I don't think it's just mostly this offense in general. How do you take a look at a guy like Jacoby Myers? Because he is getting the targets, and that's something that we value, but just doesn't seem to be doing a whole lot with it.
A couple of things there. One thing to keep in mind, they did just play Tampa Bay, who you can't run on. So they had to just dish out some more passes, which is going to catch. When they can, they're going to run more than they throw. So I don't think last week was the norm. But you're right. He is a safe from a PPR floor. He should get a lot of catches. None of them tend to be big plays. He's usable on DraftKings. He's usable in PPR leagues. I would fade him in FanDuel and stuff like that just because he's not getting those big plays, those big chunks. So it's, when they can go against a team like Houston where they're going to be able to run the ball, I don't think they'll need to pepper him with 15 or 16 targets. Yeah,
completely agree with that. One wide receiver is also doing great, and then I want to get to some maybe you're concerned about their target share, and maybe this opposite of this guy is one. But DJ Moore, I mean, is he now like the guy in Carolina? And you want to obviously you want to be starting him now. It seems like every week, but like what are you thinking now of DJ Moore and where he could potentially finish the season, because he is looking like the guy there?
So DJ Moore is the guy. And he is awesome. But my caveat to that would say this: without McCaffrey, he's a top 3 or 4 receiver for fantasy purposes. When McCaffrey comes back, I think it'll relegate a little bit back down to maybe a back end of wide receiver 1, top end wide receiver 2. So you think about how many touches McCaffrey gets, and then he's the next option. So he's gaining a lot of that you're missing from McCaffrey that he's going to lose again when McCaffrey comes back. So I think you're getting a little bit of a bubble right now. He's still going to be great, but it's just a little bit boosted because of that.
Yeah, and look, we did see him kind of in the backfield too, which was really interesting. And Joe Brady, smart as heck. He put DJ Moore in the backfield, kind of in that Christian McCaffrey type passing role, and he was getting linebackers on him, which was absolutely fantastic scheming by Joe Brady. So a great job by him. Is there any wide receiver that you were kind of concerned about when it comes to targets? Is it Robbie Anderson? Like what? Because I was just thinking him because of DJ Moore, but what wide receivers are you kind of concerned about with the amount of targets that they're getting?
So Robbie Anderson's the type of guy that's like the guy you want to look to right now in GPPs and DraftKings, right? Because he still got thrown to a good amount. It wasn't like they weren't looking at him. He didn't have a good game. But what I inevitably is going to happen is they're going to try and take away DJ Moore. They're going to have to look somewhere else. And, without McCaffrey, he's the next guy there. I think Joe Brady has the offense looking good. I think they will score points. I just think someone else is going to step up, and he's the most obvious answer. So I do think some positive regression is coming from Robbie Anderson, and he's someone I would target, as probably starting to slide under the radar for people. So in GPPs, he could be a nice way to get different.
Yeah, I do like that. You're tuned into Targets and Touches right now over at WinDailySports.com, all sponsored by the Sharp app. Go to sharp.link, and you can check out all of the ways that you can download the Sharp app. And also, promo code Double Up, buy one, get one gold membership at WinDailySports.com. Again, promo link in the description. Let's go over to some running backs. This is where it gets very interesting, and there are a couple. Saquon Barkley, is he back?
So I'm a Giants fan, so I'll give you.
Oh, nice! I didn't know that.
I'll give you the insight of someone who really watches most of their games and kind of really knows how the offense works. This is the deal with Saquon. I'll compare Saquon to someone like Ezekiel Elliott. The big difference between Saquon and Ezekiel Elliott is this: Zeke is great at finding a way to get you 4 or 5 yards every carry, and that's what gets you. He gets you 80 yards and a touchdown, like he's consistent. Saquon is the opposite. Saquon runs into the line, gets stuffed, and then breaks one off for 40 yards and a touchdown.
It reminds me of Adrian Peterson.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Adrian Peterson a little like that.
He's explosive. He's probably one of the best big plays running backs in the league. Probably the best. But it's just no consistency. It's like, the offense doesn't run smoothly. You just kind of wait for that one big play to finally happen, and then he breaks it off. So he's definitely playable because they give him the ball so much, and he eventually does break them off. But it's nerve-wracking because he very well can get you, 2 catches for 10 yards and 30 yards rushing and just nothing. So he's very hit or miss. Definitely playable, and definitely still one of the guys you want to look to because of that big playability. But it's just not the same as like the consistency of a Henry or a Zeke or one of those guys.
What are we making of the target share that Cordarrelle Patterson is getting? Because it's not like he's getting usage and targets, but it's not overwhelming, and he's not getting like 10 targets in the passing game, or he's getting a bunch of carries. It just seems like a collective, work in the run and pass game that's really bringing him some value. But he does seem, if I'm not mistaken, to me, a little touchdown dependent.
So yeah, I would agree. Listen, you don't expect what happened this week to happen again. That's
right.
Not why, right? That's not going to be that's not him moving forward. But what I will say in his defense is this: they don't have Julio Jones anymore. Ridley is getting double covered. The teams are trying to take Ridley away, so they have Pitts, but like they need to find other guys to make plays on that team, and so he's one of them. So I do think he's playable moving forward. I don't think he's going to be in a running back one or anything like that, but I do think he's someone that's going to be involved in this offense.
Yeah, and he's certainly been involved. And the weird thing is how just with what you've been seeing that Atlanta Falcon kind of running back room and how that's going. I mean, Mike Davis is getting completely phased out, isn't he? Like at this point, I hate to ask, but I guess it is the right question to ask. Is it worth rostering Mike Davis at this point?
He's worth rostering. He should be on your team. He's probably not a starter. He's a backup in my opinion. The thought with him, the issue with Mike Davis is that the Falcons are just so bad that they're always in a negative game script.
Yeah.
So there's no time for him to turn around and hand on the ball because there's never a position they're up a score and they want to run the ball. And he's also not like if he was like Saquon, where even though he only got 15 touches, he can break one off, then he'd be worth it. But he's not going to break them off. He's more plotting. And so for that, the only other thing with him and that Cordarrelle's kind of killing him on is that he used to be a really good pass catcher, and they would throw him a lot too. And they don't seem to be throwing to him as much. I mean, he's gotten a few looks, but not as much as I would have liked.
Cordarrelle Patterson is their pass-catching back, basically.
Yeah.
That's what they're using him as. This is a really good question from Ivan. Is Damien Harris still usable? Because they've been going to really this high-volume, short passing game. It reminds me a lot. I mean, obviously they did it with Tom Brady, but Tom Brady obviously threw down the field a little bit more. It reminds me of what Pittsburgh was doing, and Mac Jones seems to be pretty comfortable with this, very efficient, high-volume passing attack. Is that kind of phasing out Damien Harris, though, a little bit in the run game? Because he is very much, he has to get the carries or else he's not doing much.
It's very matchup specific with the Patriots, right? Nobody can run on the Buccaneers. So what you're seeing recently was they gave up on the run because the Buccaneers are the best run D in the league by a lot. So people don't even try to run on them. So last week he was phased out because they just was the game plan. When they face a weak team, I think this week actually, Houston, they should be able to run on. Let's see what happens this week. I think he will probably get about 20 carries, and their offense will look a whole lot different. So, listen, Bill Belichick is not about to run an offense where his rookie quarterback throws 40 times a game. I just don't see that.
That's probably not going to happen, especially with the weather, because they know they can't blow the top off of a defense. So I don't think they're going to continue all the time, dropping back 40 to 50 times and just try this high volume, passing offense. It's really tough to do,
right?
Especially for a rookie.
It's not going to happen. So, you have to do it against the Bucs because you just can't run on them. But when they start getting better matchups, the game script will change, and Harris we'll get the usage rate where we were more accustomed to seeing. And so it's that type of situation where it's like you almost want to target running backs coming off the Bucs because we know they're going to have a down week. People might be down on them, have lower ownership, and then you'll be there knowing that it was more game script specific.
So there's 2 guys that I want to go over that are probably going to be waiver wire targets as well. One, Samaje Perine. Do you think he's going to get, I have to say, similar touches and targets that Joe Mixon did, but I imagine he's going to get the majority of that. Is that something that worth rostering and maybe even playing this week?
So yes and no. Like for fantasy football purposes, like don't use all your fab on him because he's a 1 week flyer, right? So
yes.
You can do better. He's not going to be that long of a fill. If you're in a bind this week and you just one of your backs is out, you don't have anyone else. Yeah, he's going to start for an NFL team. He's worth picking up for that reason. But I wouldn't break the bank for him. He's really just not that good, and he's going to be a 1 week flyer. So if you don't have another starter, then he's better than the other alternatives. But for the most part,
if you had Joe Mixon, and I think you're going after Samaje Perine.
He's
he's good. But a guy that kind of is surprising us, and obviously it's a team I root for, Kenneth Gainwell, is not only, I think he's been great with the amount of targets that he was getting, but now he's getting even more. And he's actually carrying the ball, and he's getting, which is the most surprising part, the red zone carries, which I did not expect. Is Kenneth Gainwell, is that repeatable? I mean, obviously it's not going to be the same game script all the time, which they have to throw a bunch, but it seems like they are, and they haven't run the ball a lot. Is Kenneth Gainwell the guy to have in the backfield in Philadelphia instead of Miles Sanders?
So that's a good question, and I was going to ask you as an Eagles fan, the better question here is, are you concerned about Miles Sanders?
Yes, I was starting to have the questions coming into this season of, okay, at some point you got to kind of ask yourself, is Miles Sanders good enough? Is he? We could say, oh, once he gets the targets and once he gets all the carries, he's going to be fine and he's going to prove everyone. Like, maybe there's a reason why they're not giving him the amount of carries and why they don't trust him. And we kind of saw that 1.9 yards per carry, and I thought Kenneth Gainwell was looking better out of the backfield running the ball too. I might even just ask the question, and since I'm asking it, it does kind of ring true here. Maybe you should be targeting Kenneth Gainwell, but is Kenneth Gainwell a better running back than Sanders? Like, I think it's a legitimate question at this point.
I think he's looked good, but I will say I think Sanders has looked good at times. So I don't want to write Sanders off. And one narrative we heard this year was in preseason, it was like, hey, is Sanders losing the job? Was it Boston Scott? And then he had a good preseason, and that kind of all got erased. And now it's kind of happening again. But I will say, in Sanders' defense, it's not like they're giving him 20 touches and he's getting 20 yards. Against the Chiefs, he had like 2 carries or something? Like, they're just not giving him the ball. So it's not like he's failing. They're just not even giving him a chance. I do see an opportunity where they turn to him one game and he pops a few off, and then boom, Miles Sanders is back as a top running back and everything like that. So let's just see if they give him a chance.
Yeah, that's the thing. They need to run the ball first too. I'm waiting for the Eagles offense to kind of shift with Jalen Hurts, because they are throwing the ball a ton, and maybe a little bit because of the game scripts that's happened, but I'm waiting for them to use what Jalen Hurts is best at. I know he's been actually a better passer than I thought this season. I'm not saying he's great, but he's been good, but he is a very good running quarterback. I'm waiting for when this offense kind of Sirianni does this shift of, okay, the passing thing is working a little bit, but let's start going, heavy run game, a lot of read options with Jalen Hurts, and get kind of the running game going with him instead of trying this high volume passing offense, which I just think is weird with Hurts' skill set to be doing that.
I agree. I'm surprised that they haven't run an offense like that. You would think that seems obvious that that's what they would have done.
Right.
My only assumption is that teams are trying to take that away, and they're just
that could be true. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a good point. You're tuned into Targets and Touches right now in Daily Sports. You can actually hear Joel again tonight. Double duty. Joel is the absolute best for pulling some double duty here, because he'll be on with Spencer, and he'll be on with Sia. And you guys are, the Shriners Hospital Open that you guys are going to be breaking down tonight. So that is going to be 8 o'clock right here at windailysports.com, which is always sponsored by the Sharp app. One thing I do also want to go over is tight ends. Noah Fant, is he outside of Travis Kelce? Is he the guy? I mean, is this not only the breakout year for Noah Fant, but like he may be one of the top options, because George Kittle's been disappointing.
I agree. Noah Fant is a top 5 or 6 tight end. He's very good. I wouldn't go as far as saying he's the guy after Kelce. He's not quite there yet. One of the
Darren Waller, of course, is right. I would say probably second with the amount of targets he gets.
Similar to what we were saying earlier, right? It helps that Judy's out, and one of their main pass catchers they have to replace. So it also hurts him though that Bridgewater got hurt. I think he was great for Bridgewater. Bridgewater likes to check down and athletic tight end, safe throws. I think Locke is going to be more aggressive and maybe not look to him as much. So he's a good player. He's definitely someone you want on your roster. He's definitely someone you can go to, especially because DraftKings continues to underprice him. But yeah.
There you go, Ivan. Got to promote that too. Look at Ivan doing my job for me. I love it. Thanks, buddy.
Yes. And listen, he's Noah Fant's a really good player. So the only other issue with that is the Broncos offense, right? They're not the most explosive, so you kind of have to hope to get your points there where you can.
Yeah, certainly do. Dalton Schultz. I mean, we talk about the wide receivers often, and maybe when Michael Gallup returns, I don't know when that's going to be. I think we still have a few more weeks with him out. But, is this all because that Michael Gallup is hurt, or is Dalton Schultz legitimately just one of the top target getters? And, this is one of the favorites for Dak Prescott, because it surprised me when I saw the numbers from last year. I think he was 4 targets separated from a guy like Noah Fant. He had 89 targets last season. So it's starting to become very obvious to me that Dalton Schultz is just not, a tight end and really good passing offense, and that's why he's doing well. But he's one of the top, maybe, receiving options in this passing offense.
He is. I think that is solidified at this point that he's a receiver. Now, it's going to hurt him some when Gallup comes back, and there's just more options to spread out. Yeah. But part of what we're realizing with the Cowboys is this is a different offense than we're used to. This isn't feed Zeke 30 times a game, and they want to air it out. They're going to throw a lot. And so there's enough targets to go around, and he's good, and he's open over the middle of the field. So I think right now he's still getting a little bit undervalued, and I think he will finish as a tight end 1 by the end of the year.
Yeah, I think he will. And I ended up picking him up in my waiver wire last week, put him in for a guy by the name of Robert Tonyan. Just out of, Robert Tonyan, TJ Hawkinson, and all, like what tight ends are you kind of starting to get a little worried about? And Hawkinson has been really good, just a little bit disappointing lately. What tight ends are you starting to get really worried about? Because Tanyan's one guy for me that I think I got close to even dropping because I picked up Dalton Schultz. I was like, is it really worth keeping a guy like Tanyan around?
The issue with Tanyan is that he's so touchdown dependent, right? Yeah. You're not going to get 100-yard game at it. That's not even an option. So with Tanyan, it's like one of those games where they, triple team Adams and they just leave the tight end wide open for Rodgers to turn around and throw to. Like those are but he does that a lot because they do triple team Adams because he's so good and he just gets open. So he can score touchdowns, but you're relying on him to score a touchdown to score, which, with guys like Schultz, right? Schultz can get you 6 for 60, which is great for a tight end. So that's my thing with Tanyan. I wouldn't go with Tanyan. It's just too hit or miss. And maybe I'm not match up with the team is like notoriously the worst team against tight ends, fine. But other than that, I'm pretty much out on Robert Tonyan.
Yeah, I am too. Unfortunately, I drafted him and thought, you know what? I know touchdown dependent, but look, he's going to be a top target in the red zone. It just has not happened for him. So I think I'm out on Robert Tonyan as well. Is there any tight end? Because tight end streaming is obviously something that we all like to do. Quarterback streaming as well, but just in terms of tight end streams, is there a tight end that's kind of been catching your eye with the amount of targets that they've been getting?
Yeah, I love monitoring tight ends. I think that's the most intriguing position to kind of break.
Yes, it is. Absolutely is.
And there's a few guys that I've got on my radar this week. The first one is Max Williams on Arizona. They gave him, I think, 6 targets last week, 5 or 6. He scored a touchdown. He's on the rise. They're getting him involved in the offense. The only issue with him is they have so many mouths to feed. There's like 6 receiving options on that team, but he's one of them. And they're going to throw so many times that kind of like anything can happen. Another guy I want to mention I think is interesting is Cole Kmet. So Cole Kmet I find interesting because they barely threw the ball last week. He got like 3 targets, which you look at them, I guess nothing, but I think they only threw 17 times. So of the target share, that wasn't that bad. They're going to have games where they can't just throw 17 times and they're going to have to air it out more. And I think there is something to Justin Fields being a rookie, Kmet being really young. They're probably friends. He's one of his pass catchers. He might look to him a little bit more often. Right now he's getting completely overlooked. I think as we see more Justin Fields, I think Kmet will get more involved. He could be an under-the-radar play there.
So you're tuned in to Targets and Touches right now, as we do every Tuesday. My name is Jon Jansen. Follow me at JJansen34. And joining me for today's show is Joel at Draftmaster Flex. So last question I want to ask you, and it's back to the running backs, because it's a dilemma I see people going over all the time. And I find it really weird because I think both are doing very well, but people just panic when looking that the target share is so close. Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Just how do you kind of play these guys week to week? I mean, obviously it depends a little bit what the game script is going to be, but I find almost every week that these guys both are sort of at different times worth playing. And Nick Chubb, like, yeah, you can worry a little bit about him, but the guy still had 100 yards, and he does the absolute most with the carries that he gets. I think he's the most efficient running back behind Derrick Henry in the league. And I think with the amount of carries that he gets, he's fine. But people are sort of panicking on Nick Chubb, and Kareem Hunt seems to be getting the same amount of targets and touches. What do you make of sort of the Cleveland backfield?
So I wouldn't panic there. The thought process is this. That team wants to run so much that they can afford to have 2 running backs because they just run the ball every time. Right? They're not the Cowboys who want to throw 45 times a game. And for the Cowboys, even though they actually do have 2 running backs too, it's hard to imagine Pollard and Zeke having a playable game. Maybe one or the other, but not both. With the Browns, they want to run it 40 times. So they can each get plenty of carries and each can produce, and they have a good O-line and game script to do so. So I think both guys are in play. I wouldn't shy away.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. There have even been some games where I thought, why not play Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt? I know it always is like a weird thing to say. Like, why would you play 2 running backs? And, running backs aren't even that valuable in the NFL. But it's just the like you said, Cleveland is not like every other NFL team. They like to use both of their running backs, and they like to use them an absolute ton, especially because Odell Beckham, came back, and was injured for most of the season. To start the year, was injured most of last season. And, he came back, and he's all of a sudden their guy again because Jarvis Landry has been injured. So they kind of have to rely on their running backs more often than other teams. And it's just a different situation than everybody else. Joel, that is it for us here. But again, give us a little preview of tonight. What are you guys looking at tonight on the PGA live stream?
Come check it out, 8 o'clock. It's going to be a really fun tournament. If you guys, for the folks that follow our show, you'll hear me often talk about JV tournaments versus, the more bigger fields. We're finally getting a real field, which we haven't seen in a while. So this could be a lot of fun to break down tonight. What
do you think about Brooks and Bryson? Is that going to be fun?
Now, let me finish with this one thing. I have a conspiracy theory.
Oh, I love it.
I think the whole Brooks-Bryson rivalry
is a WWE promo. Yeah.
For pick and for making money, and it is not even. I think they're probably really friends, like good friends.
Agree. It's a wrestling feud. It's a WWE promo. That's what it is. And look, it's going to end up to a ton of pay-per-view buys, and I am absolutely all for it.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's entertaining.
I think it's fantastic. Joel, you did a fantastic job pulling double duty today. You'll be back on at 8 o'clock right here. Subscribe to Win Daily Sports for our YouTube channel and also windailysports.com. Go to the video hub, and you can check out all the videos and even our live streams there as well. That is it for us. My name is Jon Jansen at JJansen34. As we can follow me on Twitter, Joel at DraftMasterFlex. Tomorrow, 5 o'clock, going to be quarterbacks and stacks. We'll take a look at the top quarterbacks and stacks for the DFS slate for this Sunday. That is coming up tomorrow right here, all at WinDailySports.com.